the jolly heaven above and the byway nigh me. Bird in the bush and the sky to see, bread I dip in the river. There's the life for a man like me, there's the life forever. Bird in the bush and the sky to see, bread I dip in the river. There's the life for a man like me, there's the life for...
At Loch Gilphead, the local council built a new industrial estate and so wanted the travelling families off the foreshore, on which they had camped ever since anyone could remember. Shifted to the best provided of sites, the older Loch Gilphead residents don't seriously think of moving on. Now that the old economic systems which underpin traditional travelling life have all gone, that life is just something they look back upon, as do Mr. and Mrs. Willie Cameron.
Well, we used to go round all our girls here making cans, basins, big cans, and milk cans, and making baskets, and so forth like that. But now, the result is the people can buy them cheaper in the shops as what we can get the stuff to make them.
Very little of the traditional craft industry survives, although a few older travellers can still make baskets, which used to be a mainstay of traveller life. The work that travellers do has always varied according to locality, season and fashion, as well as according to the preferences and abilities of individual travellers. Nowadays, tarring driveways and dealing in scrap and waste oil are probably the commonest jobs. Some do agricultural work, but others don't consider that good enough.
This is a cleave. It's made of ivory. My father made that a long, long time ago. And it's the top of a walking stick. My father bought this in Glasgow, 2 and 6, in 1914. This is, you call a plane, a shave of different thicknesses. You elevate that plate there for to make it whatever thickness you want. You can make it very, very thin, but whatever way you want.
Those who are capable of the traditional crafts are very proud of a background of making and hawking good luck charms, lace or music. Some have taken their skills into showground work, or some still operate them as a sideline, like fortune-telling.
Make a wish. Wish for anything. Don't tell me your wish.
Right.
Open your hand. Have you made your wish?
I have.
Now, your wish wasn't for money, and your wish was not for land. If you gained your wish, it wouldn't make you rich, it wouldn't make you wealthy, but it would make you happy, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Now, you're a very funny young man. You've got very funny ways with you. For who you like, and who you don't associate with. You don't like a backbiter, you don't like a story carrier. You like a straightforward person like yourself. Now, you'll never be blessed, you'll never be kept down a marriage life with a big family. You'll only be the father of 4. You'll have 2 sons and 2 daughters. One at age of 17 will be in television by something that they're going to do very intelligent. Keep your mind and keep your business to yourself. Be aware of a dark-haired gentleman. Not so tall as yourself. What's a J or a W to their name? A wee bit fair speaking to you, but a wee bit better when your back is turned. You're in a very lucky year this year. There's deep water in front of you. You'll travel. You're born to go abroad. You'll see 4 different nations. There is a good change for your buildings, and a change that'll make you happy. But you'll gain your wish, and you'll gain a lot of health and good friends this year.
Oh, that's terrific news.
Now, are you pleased?
Yes, I'm very pleased.
Okay.
Right. Although in the past they were wrongly called gypsies, in fact, Scots travellers probably have little or no foreign blood. They were also called tinkers by the settled people, to whom they were a source of new pots and pans, and for whom they repaired and sharpened metal goods. Willie McPhee from Perthshire, here making a peace trainer, is one of the last of the travellers still able to do the craft they mostly used to live by.
they've travelled in nature, they've not been interested in acquisitiveness, but simply being able to live from day to day in their own environment, which is nature. They invade the settled community precincts simply for their living. For example, the gathering of scrap and recycling. And save the mark, recycling has become a modern concept.
Can you tell me about the time you used to go off to Perth in groups and so on?
Oh, well, the month of July when we so just like everything else about died out.
We've got machines to do it now, you see.
We have all the machines now, and in the harvest we'll go over there and do quite a lot at the harvest. But now the combine harvester has killed all that and done away with it. And now they've started now having the potato lifting machines. And that has killed our jobs in a lot of places.
We used to go to the raspberry picking too at Blairgowrie and Stanley, but we don't go anymore because we have no vehicle, you see, and it would take us weeks to go with a pony. It would.
But if there
There are probably many travellers in showground work. The Stuarts of Blair are the only Scots travellers known to have made a career out of traveller culture, about which they've sung at home and abroad.
If on marriage he is bent, then I'll give my consent. It's no every day he'll get a chance like me. For I can weave and I can work, I can wash and mend a sark. I'm as thrifty as ony lass I can. But on the nail I'll hang, and I get leave to sing. I wonder what's the deal with all the men.
I suppose when travelling people got together in big groups like that, they used to meet each other and get engaged and married and so on. Is that the way it used to happen?
Yes.
Oh, well, it used to be. A lot of elopements.
Well, I meant to say the result was the way that I found it, my wife anyway. You went, and if you saw the thing that suited you, and you got a chance for to get her to the pictures for a week or two, and then it carried on for that, maybe for a month or two, maybe for a year or two. Well, me anyway, it took me 3 years to get married.
Did it?
Aye.
So long? Why was that?
Oh, well, just
Always
so.
seemed to refuse.
Can you tell me about the elopements?
Well, a lot of them years ago used to elope. They would go to the pictures and then that was it. They were never heard of for maybe a fortnight.
And that was the way they got married?
Well, they got married when they come back.
When they come back,
They
their
got married.
parents, I made them go and get squared up.
Travellers have a strong sense of honour and of what is fitting. For example, they still observe a traditional rite when a relative dies.
When there's a death in the family.
The local caravans or tents or so forth like that. Blankets or bedding, clothing, dishes and so forth like that. It's all destroyed when we have a decease. There's only the one class of material that we keep is bagpipes or any kind of musical instrument, watches, rings, brooches or earrings. That is the only thing that we hold on to.
Why do you think that is, that so many people...
Well,
tradition.
it's just we're tradition.
What
It goes
tradition?
away back. Now, I lost my mother and Arn there a week, well, about
4 months.
4 months. Well, my youngest brother there, he burnt up everything. And I mean to say, when I lost my dad, well, I had to burn everything. No. When we lost her mother, the wife's mother there, in the Vale of Leven, we renovated the whole house out. Couldn't she stay in the house? New furniture, everything. We just came out a bonfire out the back and set to and burnt everything. Blankets, furniture, everything that was in it. No memories.
Other parents, asked why they intended to leave nothing to their children, but to burn all their possessions, answered this way. We've passed on the trick of how to survive. What else do they need? And then there are the traditions concerned with cleanliness.
Well, we don't wash our dish towels in the washing machines or in the same water if we wash our clothes in. We also have our own basin for our dishes, which we keep separate from face basins and so on and so forth. All of us do that.
The Save the Children Fund organizer, Nick Flavin, works with travellers in Central Region.
Well, I think that culture, as you know, is a very difficult concept. What is culture? Very hard to define. I think it's best to say that travellers have maybe a special attitude to life, which is perhaps something we could learn from. It's the attitude that, well, things don't really matter as much as people, and that one lives from day to day with a certain kind of trust. And the travellers are by no means apathetic. They're a hopeful people, and this is the thing we could learn from them perhaps in this day and age. I think we don't approach it from the idea that we're going to change the travellers. We approach it from the stance that change is inevitable, that in this day and age we're all suffering from the fact that change is going at a greater rate, a much faster pace, and is catching up with the travellers too. They've got a rural-type mentality, a good, wholesome rural-type mentality. They have already adapted themselves. They're possibly the first people in this country to use caravans. They will tell you themselves that now the whole society is imitating them for going on caravan holidays. And this is the kind of thing. They are actual natural adapters. They use the things around them. Let's say 20 years ago, people made baskets and people mended pots and pans. Now they will recycle scrap. They will recycle waste oil. They will, again, they will still pick berries, and every time I eat a spoon of jam, I think of travellers, because travellers are the people that actually are the hidden workers in society. And we don't actually change them or try to change them. We give them, we hope, if they accept it, and they do readily accept it, if they accept basic literacy, a basic amount like this, they're people.
We had the gumption to do what we do. Because we can earn money. But I don't think we just get money. We can go from 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock at night working if we want some. Now, the way things is going on, getting moved about the country, we've got to sit like the rest of people on the brew. Now, these people see you going into that brew office and they say, listen, these people have got caravans, new motor cars. How can they have it and we can't? Now, that is one way they're against it, because we can have things that they can't have. And I mean, anybody can have things if they work for it. I mean, I know the country's bad just now, but the good weather's coming in and we're hoping to go away and work, because the travel season's coming in for us. Come on, Tutapel.
This year, the McDonalds will be going to France.
Je m'appelle...
Betty.
Yes.
What's your name?
No, that's my name.
My name is Betty.
Betty. To vous jouer. You know that one, you said,
What
obviously.
do you want?
No,
What
do you want to
play?
play? We've been sure?
Yes, sure.
Sure. We don't know too much, we're just learning, you see. So the kids are picking it up quicker than I'm picking it up. So if they learn, they can learn me once I'm over there, you see. We'll have the spring, we'll have the summer, and then we'll have the back end in autumn. Then we can earn money, we'll work hard and get it. And this is what the people are up against. They won't do what we do. They won't go in a tarty field at 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. We'll do it, because we have to do it. And anything we want, we'll say, we'll look at a new caravan we want that, so we'll go and work for it. But it isn't the whole, and that's what, in the field, lifting tarties, shawing turnips, doing anything to help the family get on. And that's why we differ from other people.
They have a profound independence of spirit. As the Orkney poet Robert Rendell said, with independent heart and mind hold I my heritage. So that they have what I would call their own culture, their own language, their own contribution to make, their proximity to nature throughout their lives from bairnhood onwards. And settlement in houses for them is a very difficult proposition indeed. Once the settled community understand these sterling people and don't attribute to the group the failings of the few, a principle on which none of it stand, then if that...
Robbie Macmillan of Elgin, Murrayshire, pearl fisher and pine-cone gatherer, camping on the banks of the Spey. Robbie was born and bred one of the travelling people, the name by which most British people of nomadic lifestyle like to be known. In Scotland, travellers are often labelled tinkers, but because this term is felt to be abusive, it's not used within the group. In the North Highlands, the crofters call the travelling people the summer walkers. Each summer, Robbie walks and fishes the great rivers of northeast Scotland, the Spey, the Dee and the Don. In autumn, his family collect pine cones for the Forestry Commission before returning to winter quarters in Elgin. When asked whether he was a singer, he replied, "Me, no, far too many convictions for that."
Duncan Williamson, Argyllshire traveller, gathering whelks near Ardrishaig on Loch Fyne. His sister-in-law, Mary Williamson, works with her daughter, Mary. Duncan was one of 16 children, and his mother was born in a cave at Moosdale, Kintyre. Of all minority groups in Scotland, the travellers are the lowest social and cultural status. Some pubs refuse to serve travellers. Many of their traditional campsites have been blocked off or turned into rubbish dumps. Shellfish provided an important part of the diet of Britain's first inhabitants. Today, whelks sold by the pound in Tarbert are exported by air to France. It's ironic that pressures on traveller lifestyle should be intensifying at a time of resurgent national and cultural consciousness in Scotland. For there's no doubt that they are the heirs of a vital element in Scottish history and carriers of an essentially Celtic culture. Traveller culture and lifestyle are inseparably intertwined. Their most precious possessions are their freedom and the songs and stories that life on the road has given them. In material terms, most travellers are poor. They retain only the remnants of a tradition of craftsmanship, but they still keep alive an ancient and vital oral literature that makes theirs one of the most genuine folk cultures of Europe. The life of travellers is changing. Many are moving into towns and making permanent homes, but most people of traveller origin retain a sense of shared history and kinship. a sense of brotherhood that survives internal feuding and external antipathy. Jock Townsley of Clachan, Kintyre, cutting willow wands for baskets. Jock, his family, and his unmarried brother live in a bus, a bow tent, and a collection of chicken sheds at home above West Loch Tarbert. The homestead is signposted, Home Sweet Home. Defined narrowly, there are about 1,800 travellers on the road in Scotland, but defined broadly, they are an extensive group, perhaps 20,000 strong. Mary Williamson has spent all her life on the road in traditional traveller tents, raising and losing children, setting up camp and being moved on. Now with her family she lives permanently on the outskirts of Loch Gilphead. Mary learned her music and craft skills from her mother, Bonnie Bella Townsley. There are nomadic peoples, gypsies and tramps in most European countries, but the Scottish travellers shouldn't be confused with either. Few of them share the particular racial origins of the gypsies, and the communal family culture of the travellers is very different from the solitary egocentricity of tramps. To differentiate himself from a passing tramp, a young Aberdeenshire traveller once gave epigrammatic expression to this fact when he said, "That kind of lad's not one of us. Charlie Doyle just lives for day to day, but we," meaning the travellers, "we live entirely in the past." Elderwood is traditionally used for the carving of flowers. It shaves easily, and its hollow stem allows it to be mounted on a privet stalk. When traveller women go hawking, flowers are one means of soothing introductions at the door. In the Highlands, the travellers have never radically altered their ancient lifestyle. Among settled crofting communities, they've made a virtue of their habitual and traditional movement. Until quite recently, there have been the newsbringers, hawkers and peddlers. They gathered herbs and wormed dogs. In particular, they brought music and entertainment. Their bilingualism has made them an important source of contact between Gaelic and English-speaking areas. But they retain the explosiveness of a frontier people. Jock Townsley and his son Norman prepare to cut heather to make a scouring brush. Jock is a bagpiper and Norman a skilled hunter with snare and rabbit net. The Townsley children play with a pram still used for hawking. As tinsmiths and farrowers, as besom makers and basket menders, the travellers have provided the Highlands with basic craftsmanship and an adaptable pool of seasonal labour, but also a focus for local resentments. As the Jews have been blamed for killing Christ, so the tinkers have been blamed for providing the nails. But this allegation has been neatly turned aside by the travelling community to sanction their reputation for theft. For it's said that of the 4 nails set aside for the crucifixion, 1 was stolen by a travelling man. Grateful for small mercies, Christ has since turned a blind eye to tinker choring, stealing, at least every now and then.
Oh, what did he pecky and lose the hapney? The greedy old miser, he should have picked one. Oh, stall your mangin, here bangs the God ye, for we love Jesus, yes we do.
Little is certain about the origins of the travelling people. Only a minority can be immediately recognized by particular physical characteristics. Most seem to mix the features of various ethnic groups, Celtic, Norse, Anglo-Saxon, but also, not surprisingly, older Aboriginal strains. A strange myth has grown up to explain the oriental appearance of the Cape Ness travellers. They're said to be the descendants of Japanese sailors, shipwrecked long ago on the Pentland Firth. Before the days of the Brillo pad, scouring brushes like these were widely used in the Highlands. Stories about the history of traveller families often concern royalty, the nobility, and Jacobite rebels forced into tinkerdom. Other suggestions make them the descendants of crofters put on the road as a result of the Highland clearances. The travellers are an adaptive group, but the vast majority of such stories are clearly fanciful. A traveller lifestyle was established in Scotland long before the clearances and the Jacobite period. In 1665, the Scots Estates ordered the transportation of strong and idle beggars, gypsies and criminals to Jamaica. Before the first migration of gypsies into Britain, there are written records of the tinklers residing in Perth, and of that old traveller family, the Faws, living at Kirkyetum on the border. Basic accommodation has long been the bow tent, or wattle, a portable or disposable shelter that consists of a framework of sticks draped with some kind of a cover. The skeleton of bowed hazel or rowan saplings is very strong, and the igloo shape resistant to wind. The tents vary in size, but all are constructed according to similar principles, incorporating the dynamics of the round arch and employing a modular system of construction. Living units like these provided the beginnings of European architecture. The travellers retain a pre-industrial, a pre-agricultural sense of leisure. Work and play are hardly differentiated. They possess an aversion not to hard work, but to habitual labour and the discipline of the clock. The values and satisfaction of the farmer are not theirs. Acute awareness of the past isn't balanced by organised plans for the future. Far from being the flotsam of the ages, a kind of dropouts anonymous, the travellers are the heirs of a cohesive social group whose origins almost certainly lie in the pre-Christian era. Evidence suggests that they're either the heirs of a caste of nomadic metal workers who rose to play an important part in high Celtic society, or older still, the heirs of the Aboriginal hunter-gatherers who were pushed into northern Europe in the Neolithic period. The Townsleys recently applied for a house, but since local villagers objected to the idea of tinker neighbours, Strathclyde region are to build them a special house in an isolated spot costing £37,000. Now, with aristocratic disdain, Jock Townsley says that when the house is complete, he'll inspect it, and only then make a decision as to whether or not he'll live in it. Until the beginning of the 20th century, a fair number of travellers lived part of the year in caves. In bad weather on their summer tours, the Townsley family still move into the Tinker Caves of Kintyre. In Aberdeenshire, famous warrens of caves were abandoned as communal homes only about 60 years ago. As an old traveller said in the 50s, all those caves have been condemned now. In a technological society, we shouldn't forget the tenacity with which traditional social forms and ideas can faithfully transmit themselves over generations. The Highlands have always been a difficult area for agriculturists, and they still retain the geographical characteristics of Paleolithic Europe. The Mackenzies of Fortingal in Perthshire, Martha and James and John. Martha still burns an open fire in a tiny tent, little bigger than a dog kennel. Sheila Stewart sings.
My heart's been broken so many times that I may fear it may never mend again. My soul is bruised and my body is filled with woe and pain.
Willie McPhee at his winter camp amongst the potato fields of Lunkerty. Willie is a piper and one of the last traveller tinsmiths. Here he begins work on a peace strainer. The Tinkers got their name from the traditional practice of tinsmithing. Itinerant metal workers have been important in the Highlands because the scattered population could support few permanent smiths or settled master craftsmen. Highland craftsmen tended to remain journeymen, travellers. In recent times, the aesthetic standards of traveller craftsmanship have not been high. As heads of mobile families, the tinsmiths have rarely become specialists. They pride themselves on being jacks of all trades. Tinker metalwork is utilitarian. Cheapness and ingenuity are its hallmarks. Older travellers remember as children being sent to scour rubbish dumps for old corned beef tins. The solder used to seal the tins could be melted out and used again. The culture of the travellers fits clearly into a Celtic mould. In old Celtic society, the craftsman, like the poet and the warrior, was highly valued, and the complete hero had to be something of a smith as well as a singer and a fighter. Amongst the travellers, men are esteemed according to similar values today. It's interesting that Lugh, one of the most important of the Celtic gods and the protector of roads and wayfarers, was like a good traveller, a jack of all trades. Lugh, it is said, arrived at the gates of the palace of Ard Ri na Haireann, the High King of Ireland, seeking service, as Apollo sought service in the house of Admetus. All the specialist jobs had been taken, and Lugh would have been turned away but for the ability he claimed to specialize in everything. He was the universal craftsman, musician, historian, sorcerer, horseman, cupbearer, and much more. Self-sufficient as a true traveller, Lugh succeeded in gaining admittance into the great palace of Tara. It is noteworthy that when Yeats wrote his fine poem in memory of Major Robert Gregory, he acclaimed the dead hero for possessing exactly the same combination of talents. What other could so well have counselled us in all lovely intricacies of a house, as he that practised or that understood all work in metal or in wood, in moulded plaster or in carven stone? Soldier, scholar, horseman he, and all he did done perfectly, as though he had but that one trade alone. The Pictish silver bowls that comprise part of St. Ninian's treasure are incised with patterns that are almost identical to those Willie McPhee learnt from his grandfather. These are based upon the natural movement of the compass, and the result is a typically Celtic combination of geometric abstraction and stylized natural form. Metalworking in all non-literate societies is a ritualized and highly traditional activity. The secrets and skills are handed down within families, and it's not fanciful to suggest historic links between Highland traveller smiths and the great metalworkers of the heroic age. Today, however, tinsmithing is a dying, almost a dead craft, and traveller smithing skills have been redirected into the far more profitable scrap metal business. Here, Duncan Williamson sought scrap by fire at his wintering place in Fife. The tradition of itinerant culture carriers in Gaelic society is very old. The highly valued men of art, the Us Dana, always had intertribal responsibilities. The poets and Shanachis, the smiths and jewelers, the medicine men and the lawyers, all carried their knowledge and skills from tribe to tribe. They were the privileged custodians of the people's myths and history, their exploit and dream, the guardians of runes and secrets. In this connection, the cant language of the Highland travellers is of great interest, for Gaelic-speaking travellers have a secret language, a strange backslang known as the Béla Record, which, like the Irish cant their Laggan and Sur, has historic links with the ancient cover tongue used by the early Gaelic poets. Thus, through the cant language of the Highland travellers, we can perceive another link between contemporary travellers and the itinerant men of culture of the medieval period.
For I will dress you in tartans and ribbons, said bra, 'cause your daddy's a soldier and the bull for twa. He's a bonny blue-eyed laddie, he's a fleur ma, and he joined young gallant Redmond, cut the bull for twa.
In full Highland dress, Willie McPhee is hardly recognizable as the tinsmith who made the peace strainer. During the summer months, he pipes for the tourists in lay-bys from Glencoe to the Falls of Shin in Sutherland. In the forces, travellers have often served as pipers and batmen. Military discipline proved intolerable to some travellers, but most enjoyed army life. They tended to get on well with the officers. They, as Jeannie Robertson said, meaning the officers, understand our folk. Members of a paternalistic society, the travellers can, when they choose, serve authority without feeling demeaned. The road to Coleraine, Sutherland, the southland of the Norsemen. This bungalow is the home of Brian and Ina Stewart. With their poultry and animals, Brian and Ina lead a life very similar to the crofters who live round them. Similar, but different, for they were brought up as mobile Gaelic-speaking travellers. Both their parents were tinsmiths. Each summer the Stewart clan took to the road with their horses, dogs, their carts and their wattles. Translating a Gaelic phrase, Hugh MacDermott has written, "Every force evokes its own form." This is true of Celtic art and true also of traveller oral literature. Moving through a landscape of Homeric grandeur, the Sutherland travellers have always been great storytellers, and in Sutherland the Gaelic oral literature of the travelling people long retained great richness and purity. The travelling people of the North Highlands remain a living advertisement for that quality of rural speech that appealed to Wordsworth, and which J.M. Synge found amongst the Aran Islanders. An imageful vocabulary flows naturally from a life in which the fantastic and the fairy tale grow out of daily routine. A gasping trout placed in the mouth is the cure for diphtheria. Exotic nicknames flourish: wooden sleeves, love in a close, the sheep's heed, the big mahungry, laughter, the Rockingham teapot, the half-hangit minister. It's bad luck to use the name McPhee, it's a jinx. In Gaelic the name is sexually suggestive, and to avoid using it, all kinds of cover names are employed, at least till noontide. As well as speaking Gaelic and English, Brian Stewart knows both the English traveller cant and the Gaelic cant, the Bíola Record. A popular song using English cant words honours a chicken thief, Big Jimmy Drummond. Duncan Williamson, the singer.
Then the yaffin start barking at the coorie. The gadget got startled, I'm sure. These knockings are children organies. I better no bangin' be sure. Then the horny he come in the morgan. He bung with a clasty himself. Sin Jimmy, I'm sure you've been churn, and your friend he did me new to tell. Oh, more Tom bangin' every John, to the star day I'm gone to myself. I will mully all the garnies and dozen. I've been better to gang by myself. Tonight I'm in a Calstar day, and there I'm lying by myself. I had sure the garnies for comfort, but the God
Stewart no longer travels regularly, but he still owns 3 horses, and each summer he drives by car along the roads he walked as a boy to clean the wells and springs at the old camping places. Stewart is a fine Gaelic storyteller, but he learnt the art from a great storyteller, his uncle, Blind Alec Stewart of Lairg, better known as Ali Dowell. Ali Dowell, whom Callum MacLean described as the best Gaelic storyteller ever recorded on the mainland of Scotland. It was by a fire, amidst a circle of bow tents near the mouth of Strathnaver, that this old blind man was first recorded in 1955.
Ach, wow, sir, Willie, go kial. Het me shika hier, me hes me gilles mocho chin trur hier in me. Me hes me gilles mocho chin trur hier in me. Ach, wat shach
that song, Bruata Rebretin, the dream of the King of Britain, is of great interest to scholars, for it's one of the few direct links between the world of Arthurian, that is, of early Welsh literature, and the Gaelic world. Ali Dowell learnt his songs from his mother, Old Susie, said to have been the best of all the traveller storytellers. She died aged 91 in 1938, and she learnt her stories from relatives born in the 18th century. Ali Dowell's stories, therefore, are thus not far removed from those collected by James Macpherson and used as material for his famous bogus epic. But both men, Ossian Macpherson and Ali Dowell, had genuine access to a world that stretches back to Arthur's Britain and beyond, to the heroic myths and legends of the pre-Christian Gaeltach.
Go watch. Svattel aan de schien. Wat kwachend peker uit kan u niet te boeien gassen. Zwei onweken uit kan u niet te boeien king. A harwet skool faska. Kusteritja te aan de schien. Scharat stui. Alles bescho. Kan je niet harken met je meneer. Swamach kaisishin kana katingati tu. Hanigo hostingati tu.
I will build you a boat down by yon clear fountain, and I'll cover it with a fluoro the mountain. I will raise the mountain side and the dark glen so weary, and I'll bring all my spoils to the
As a boy, Gordon Stewart acted as the eyes and support of old Ali Dowell. A fluent speaker of Sutherland Gaelic, he now works as a fencer all over the Highlands and Islands. He lives in this untenanted farmhouse above Bona Bridge. Kate Williamson is the sister of Ina Stewart. She lives with her brothers Peter and John in Ardguy. All have Gaelic as their mother tongue and speak it amongst themselves all the time. To outsiders, travellers tend to show one of two faces. Either a modesty, a shyness that suggests acceptance of an inferior status, or else occasionally a wild and abusive aggression. Traditional self-sufficiency has given some a remarkable natural authority. As a minority group, however, they all share a basically introverted wariness of the settled population. This reserve is one reason why the travellers have retained their separate identity over centuries. Marriage patterns reflect their public introversion. Marriages between relations are often the rule rather than the exception. Protective webs of kinship are continually reinforced, and the hereditary strengths and weaknesses of the group are emphasized.
So this was called Maggie Towsley and Johnny. Oh, my wee Maggie's a hump and a poochen, a bunward sprachen, my wee Maggie. Oh, Maggie got a man, the kide and the nigger, his face is no any bigger than a penny figure, a hump and a poochen, a bunward sprachen, that's my wee Maggie. Oh, Johnny got his bundle, and Maggie got the can, up the glen to the Alblin man, up the glen to the Alblin man, for to bide the next in the morning. Johnny says to Maggie, oh, come into the shed, I will shake the straw, and you can mak the bed, for this is the place where your mother she was made, and we're gone down the glen in the morning. Oh, my wee Maggie's a hump and a poochen, a bunward sprachen, my wee Maggie. Oh, Johnny with the bundle, and Maggie with the can, up the glen to the Alblin man, oh, up the glen to the Alblin man, for to get their tea in the morning. So Johnny says to Maggie, now we've been wed, we'll lay a next in a bonny stray bed, out in the glen we will gang next day.
The travelling people involve themselves in seasonal labour all over the Highlands. But the major event is the raspberry picking, centred on Blairgowrie in East Perthshire, The berry fields of Blair, lying in the vale of Strathmore between the Grampians and the Sidlaw Hills, are one of the great fruit-growing areas of Britain, and every year these fields have provided an arena for the gathering of travelling people. The musical traditions of the Perthshire travellers are personified in the Stewart family of Alec and Bell, better known as the Stewarts of Blair. For generations they've been pipers and singers of renown. Here, Bell Stewart sings her own song, The Berry Fields of Blair.
When a berry time comes around each year, Blair's population swelling. There is every kind of picker there, and every kind of dwelling. There's tents and huts and caravans, there's a bothies and there are bevies, and shelters made wi' tatty bags, and the dugouts made wi' divvies. There is corner boys fae Glasgow, kettle boilers fae Lochee, and miners fae the pits o' Fife, and mill workers fae Dundee, and fisher folk fae Peterhead, and tramps fae everywhere, all looking for a living off the berry fields of Blair. There is travellers fae the Western Isles, fae Arn, Mullen Sky, fae Harris, Lewis, and the Kyles o' Bute, they come their luck to try. Fae Inverness and Aberdeen, fae Stornoway and Wick, all flock to Blair at the berry time, the straws and rasps to pick. Now there's some wha earn a pounder it was, some canny earn their keep, and some would pick fae morn to night, and some would rather sleep. But there's some wha has to pick or stare, and some wha dinna care. There's some wha bless, and some wha curse the berry fields of Blair. Now there's families a picking for one purse, and some wha pick their lane. And there's a men wha share alike wi' wives that's no their ain. There's a gladness, aye, and sadness at tea. There's a happy heart sincere, for there's comedy and tragedy played on the fields of Blair. But afore I put my pen awa', it's this I would like to say. You'll travel far before you'll meet a kinder lot than they. For I've mixed with them in field and pub, and while I've breath to spare, I'll bless the hand that led me to the berry fields of Blair.
When did you first compose that, Mrs. Stewart?
I would say maybe 24 or 25 years ago, because Andrew was just a baby and he's 26.
I see. And did you compose it by yourself?
Well, no, my husband gave me a hand with it, and he's also the man that chose the tune to it.
I see.
We had various tunes, you know, and none of them seemed to suit it the same as that, so
I see.
Alec, he composed this.
So it's a joint production of the two of you?
Yes.
I was born in a very small tent, which most of the travelling people lived in at that time, you know. They didn't live in houses at all then. My father just roamed about, my mother, and I was born in a small tent at a place called Capeth, on the bank of the River Tay, on the way to Dunkeld. And I was the first girl born, which of course my father was very, very happy about that morning. But my mother was very ill, They didn't have any medical attention at all then. None of the travelling people in confinements or anything else. Oh, two pretty boys were going to the school, and one evening coming home, said William to John, can you throw a stone? Or can you play at a ball, or can you play at a ball? Said William to John, I cannot throw a stone, nor a little can I play at a ball. But if you come down to yon merry green woods, I'll try you a wrestling fall. I'll try you a wrestling fall. So when they came to yon merry green wood, beneath the spreading moon, the little penknife slipped out of William's pocket, which gave John his deadly wound, which gave John his deadly wound. Oh, you'll take off your white holland shirt, and you'll tear it from gore to gore, and you shall bind my deadly wounds, and they shall blood no more, no more, and they shall blood no more. Oh, he took off his white holland shirt, and he tore it from gore to gore, and he did bind his deadly wounds, but they bled 10 times more and more, or they bled 10 times more. Oh, what will I tell to your father dear, this night when I go home? You can tell him I'm away to a London school, and the good scholar I'll come home, and the good scholar I'll come home.
Oh, but I'll be dead afore you come back, in the green kirkyard o' Fyvie. Nor a feather struck her wondrous sore, and also did her mother, and her sisters also took their score. But woe betide her brother, her brother struck her wondrous sore. We cruel strokes and many, and he broke her back over the temple stain, aye, the temple stain o' Fyvie. Oh, mother dear, please make my bed, and lay my face to Fyvie, for I will lie and I will die for my dear Andra-lammy. Nu when Andra hem för Edinburgh came, we muckle grief and sorrow. Oh, my love, she died for me last night, so I'll die for her tomorrow.
The singer is important to put it over properly, but to me the song and the ballad is the most important thing.
Okay.
Because you can be a horrible singer, but put that ballad over, great.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a great singer. Well, if you've got the story of the ballad in your heart and you're singing it for your heart, suppose you haven't got a good voice, it makes folks sit up and take notice.
Aye.
And they're listening to the music, and they're also listening to the story of the ballad and the song. And this is the value I get from listening to somebody who hasn't got the cognac. Because it wouldn't take long to give that person the cognac, and it would change their life altogether. Because it's not just for letting an audience hear the cognac, it's soul searching for yourself. And you search and you find your soul and you put that into the singing, and you have no idea the feeling you get when you accept it and understand it. This has happened to me so many times, teaching singing, is the person's attitude. They go up and say, listen to me singing this lovely ballad. But the right way to look at it is, listen to this lovely ballad that I'm going to sing to you. Well, it makes the hairs of your back of your head stand on end. Shivers goes through you. You know, and you say, oh Jesus, listen to that. And there's not very many songs that can do that. But it depends on the person that's putting the song over. You know? So to me, I still get that feeling of shivering and, you know,
Aye.
makes me happy. Very, very. You can't explain the happiness. It's unbelievable. Because they've touched on a chord within your body.
I'm Jess Smith. I'm a Scottish traveller. I spend all my time researching the culture of the travellers in Scotland, because Scotland's got so many levels. You know, it's got mountains and it's got lochs and glens, and there's places of serious interest to the history of Scotland, to the people of Scotland. Historic Environment Scotland are the guardians of the story of Scotland. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to have Historic Environment Scotland continually looking at the life of our ancient places, because we've got generations that are coming forward. Tinker is a word that was used mainly by the last generation for travelling people, and in particular in Argyllshire and the Highlands. This was an area that to the travelling people had existed for generations. It was where travellers married. It was where women took their babies to be blessed. It was where the dead came to be also blessed before they were buried in the surrounding countryside, because travellers didn't belong to any church. They didn't have any particular place. Historic Environment Scotland have been the main instrument in looking after the Tinker's Heart. They will protect it. It's in good hands now. The Tinker's Heart, to me, is all about how we respect our culture. Not just a culture, but everyone's culture. We are all equal. Nobody knows how long the Tinker's Heart, those stones, white quartz, has been in the ground. It's always been a sacred circle, a sacred place. And now Historic Environment Scotland have become the guardians of what was a sacred place for the travellers in Scotland.
Nagin's Navas Davy, Nagin's is Nachin. This Lelum's Mangin is Nagin's Tay. Gypsy travellers have been a legally recognised ethnic minority since 2008, but very few in the general public truly know who we are. Scottish travellers, or tinklers as we were once known, have been in Scotland since at least the 12th century, with our own oral history placing us as far back as the 9th. But the first recorded gypsy in Scotland was in 1505, when, in the Book of the Treasurer to the King, James IV demanded a sum of £7 be paid to the Egyptians. Later in 1540, James V would proclaim the leader of these Egyptians, Johnny Fa, the Earl of Little Egypt, a title that was to later become the King of the Gypsies. But it wasn't just the high and mighty. Since medieval times, travellers and gypsies have played a myriad of roles throughout Scotland. We were the craftspeople, the ballad singers and the pearl fishers. We also worked the land, with agricultural areas such as Perthshire and Angus reliant upon our nomadic workforce. Travellers have been immortalised in art and literature, with our beloved Scottish bard Rabbie Burns even claiming that he had a gypsy muse, and depicting travellers within much of his poetry and song. It's been said that the bard first heard the famous Auld Lang Syne from the mouth of a traveller. We have contributed a lot to Scotland's heritage. Who knows, the very perils on the honours of Scotland may well have passed through the skilled hands of a traveller. But despite the important role that our people have played in Scotland's story, we have often been pushed to the margins and have faced persecution. In the 1570s, despite living in Scotland for generations, our people were ordered to stop travelling or to face deportation. Punishment soon became death, and many travellers were tragically hanged for the crime of following their indigenous way of life. 1714 saw the last travellers hanged for being gypsies. Jean Bailey and Agnes MacDonald were tragically hanged at the Grassmarket in Edinburgh, but this was far from the last example of persecution in our story. The 18th century saw a new form of punishment. Travellers from across the country were now being forcibly deported across the seas, with some records showing that travellers were even sent to slave plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas. The 19th century brought with it new ideologies of who should fit into society and who shouldn't. And in 1895, the authorities launched an inquiry into what they termed the tinker problem. The inquiry heard evidence from across the country, and the report concluded eradication is the only cure. This statement would lead to many travellers being forced into segregation from society. Segregated schooling, designated areas termed tinker reserves, and legislation set at removing nomadic travelling people from the Scottish landscape. But by far the most tragic impact of this statement was felt by traveller children. Throughout the 20th century, many traveller children were removed from their families for no other reason than that they had been born travellers. This trauma remained with those children, but it continues to resonate with our community today. Our connections with Scotland's landscape are forgotten by society, our ancestral stopping places blocked with boulders, and our contributions to Scotland's history are omitted. But despite it all, we are a proud people, proud of our culture and our heritage. Today, many of us continue to travel Scotland's roads, shifting through places sacred to our ancestors and passing on our culture and traditions for a new generation. Other travellers live in houses or on permanent sites. But no matter where we choose to live, we speak our languages with pride and we stand up for our right to belong. This Lelum's Mangan is Nagan's Tay.